Welcome to this morning's session, or today's session. It's midday now. We'll get started in a second. Alrighty, we've got quite a few people online, so we'll get started and then kind of as people jump in, we'll be into it by then. So welcome to Contracting 101, everything you need to know before becoming a contractor. My name is Shearman. I'm a technical consultant specialising in software development, engineering and infrastructure here at Digital Talent Co. And I'm joined by my colleague and our marketing consultant, Kayla Wren.
Hello everyone. As I'm sure majority of you are aware, Digital Talent Co is a boutique recruitment agency specialising in digital talent. We have successfully recruited for some of Australia's most loved digital agencies, startups and scale-ups, financial services, ASX listed companies and more.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Kayla and I have a really unique job. Every day we're speaking to countless candidates from all different roles and experiences. Some people we're talking to have been stood down, others have been let go, and some of our candidates are in employment but are no longer entirely happy and want to weigh up their other options.
As we are all coming out of the COVID fog, businesses are looking at what's next and more importantly, what the next steps will look like. What we're seeing from the market is a greater appetite for flexible talent solutions. And for some, I guess for a variety of reasons, businesses and employees like yourself are adapting to a new way of doing things. Today is all about answering those burning questions about becoming a contractor as a career pivot, or even just for the next few months until the market stabilizes and returns back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, what we've done is we've kind of collected the frequently asked questions we're getting from candidates all the time, and we'll answer those today. But if you have a question we haven't answered, definitely pop it in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to those at the end of the session as well. So I guess starting off with a big one, why is this conversation relevant right now?
With the current changes in the environment, this contracting conversation is more relevant than ever. Speaking from an employer's perspective, businesses and hiring managers are the busiest they have ever been, I guess with the remote working conditions. Contracting is a more convenient, faster approach to getting resources onto urgent projects with the potential to employ them full-time in the future if they fit the business.
Absolutely. And I guess speaking from an employee's perspective or your perspective, contracting is kind of giving you that option to keep your career moving, and people kind of asking that question of, what am I going to do until the job market comes back to normal in terms of full-time permanent roles? And also, how do I keep income coming into my home, putting food on the table? I think it's as simple as that as well.
Yeah.
Definitely. Something else we always get asked is, do I need an ABN?
Simple as no, you don't. We can register you in our system as a PAYG contractor. It's as simple as filling out the necessary paperwork and logging your hours weekly. You'll then get paid like a normal employee, including still receiving super either on a weekly, fortnightly or monthly basis, depending on the contract.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess in the kind of same breath, and another very frequently asked question is, how do I calculate my rate per hour? So for a lot of people, they're used to being a full-time permanent employee on a salary, and kind of going into the contracting market seems a bit scary because they don't even know where to start in terms of what to charge. So I've put it up on the screen, kind of simple calculations to run. This is just general in nature. Obviously with the COVID market, remuneration looks slightly different as there is kind of a flood of candidates on the market. So that's definitely something we can talk about if you want to have a call and go through that. But for a general rule, full-time roles are calculated based off a worked hourly rate of 1,980 hours per year. But 770 of those hours are benefits in one way or another. So public holidays, annual leave, sick leave, miscellaneous leave, professional development time, all those different things. So in the simplest way, when it comes to contracting, what you're trying to do is make that same amount of money, but in a shorter time frame, which is kind of why you're dividing it by the 1,210 hours or the 1,000 hours, depending on the duration of that contract. But yeah, if you just want to take a screenshot of that, generally the best way to kind of get a ballpark, and then you can tweak there depending on the role, the engagement, all those different things. And it's also important to make sure it's inclusive of super.
Yeah, definitely. So including super is super important, as well as keep in mind you'll also have to pay tax out of pocket at the end of financial year. I think some other things that we could probably add there is our preferred method is definitely PAYG, which is the contractor's base rate, whether that be hourly, daily or weekly, including super. The other option is for us to hire the contractor as a PTY LTD, but for yourself or for the contractor, that does put a lot of pressure and admin on you to ensure you're correctly insured and protected. Something also to note is we do not accept sole traders at this stage. It's either PAYG or PTY LTD.
Yeah, and I guess when we say it's our preferred method, like the ultimate goal is to make this as easy and streamlined for you as possible. And if you aren't a career contractor, if this is just a short-term kind of stint for you to get through COVID and beyond, coming in as a PAYG is kind of the closest thing to emulate a permanent full-time kind of relationship. Awesome. The next question, why would I use a recruitment agency for contracting roles? My answer to that is quite simple, the same reason why you'd use a recruiter for a permanent full-time role. We kind of advocate and act as an agent on your behalf going into businesses, but also something that people don't always know, and it's certainly something I didn't know until I came into industry, is a lot of the contracts I'm working on for my clients aren't actually something they're promoting on their normal channels. So if you have a good relationship with a recruiter, you're actually getting access to roles that you wouldn't be able to find on Seek or LinkedIn or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Sure.
The next question is, I skipped one.
Okay.
What are the benefits and pitfalls of becoming a contractor, Kayla?
I think first benefit is obviously to widen your scope at the moment of potential employment opportunity. So instead of pigeonholing yourself into looking for a full-time permanent role, opening up those short-term contracts, you just really never know what's going to happen. You could start into a contract role, it could turn out to be full-time, but I guess that would probably be the biggest one. It just make sure you're keeping your options open and you're fully seeing the market as it is.
Yeah, and I know for my candidates, particularly the ones that were in full-time permanent roles, and even some of my friends too, they're wanting to know how can I keep my career moving and kind of keep myself in industry relevant. And right now, one of the best ways to do that is kind of looking at contracting as an alternative to a permanent full-time role. Another thing is that businesses are kind of a bit traumatized from the past few months and they're not quite ready or don't have the confidence to make a permanent decision. So getting a contractor in the building is a great way for you to meet them to meet you, and then once that confidence is built up and then kind of the market stabilizes, that might transition into that full-time opportunity that you're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even a short-term contract could still give you so many new skills you may not have been, identified before. So whether, I know it's not the same as going into a full-time role, but even if it's a 6-week to 3-month contract, you could learn something really beneficial to your career that can obviously guide you into that next full-time role. So
yeah, and for career contractors, that's the big benefit for them, is they love coming into an organization, getting their hands dirty, applying their skills, but also learning a bunch of new skills, sign sealing, delivering that project, and then going on to the next thing. So I guess with contracting, you definitely never get bored. It's a fast-paced way to kind of do project to project.
Yeah, definitely.
What about pitfalls?
I think this is a bit of a difficult one due to the circumstances at the moment, because obviously there are so many benefits for temporary, work. For me, I'm not really seeing many pitfalls, I guess.
I think, generally speaking, contracting, it isn't for everyone. Some people really value stability and kind of knowing that they have a secure place in a company on that long-term basis. But also right now, as Kayla says, you're better off kind of entertaining both a full-time permanent and a contracting opportunity just until we kind of see the market stabilize and other options come to fruition.
Yeah, definitely.
Something I've even been discussing as recently as this morning is, do I BYO my own equipment?
So I think most seasoned contractors will already have their own equipment. However, again, due to the COVID circumstances, someone that is traditionally a regular full-time employee that will be taking on these contracting roles, I guess you might not have the equipment, meaning it could be supplied to you from the employer. So it also depends on the engagement itself and the company's security. So your personal computer might not be able to access the system for the employer. That's all discussed throughout the interview or before any contracts are signed or even offered. So
yeah, beautiful. And I guess on that kind of BYO equipment note, it like anything we're discussing today, it really depends on the engagement. If you're coming in for 10 hours to do a quick graphic design project, versus joining a company for a 6-month period in a systems role.
Yeah.
Kind of the equipment supplied and the needs around that are going to be really different. Something to point out that Luke's actually online. He's a career contractor, so he is definitely qualified on this topic. Just looping back to the pros and cons, something he just brought up was applying for loans can be a bit harder, and that's the case whether you're a business owner, a sole trader, or a contractor. Anything that where the income isn't stable, and I've applied for loans before, I've got a home loan.
Yeah,
something they're really looking for is consistency. So if you are looking at applying for a home loan or even a long-term loan, that is definitely something to keep in mind, and a great point from Luke.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. That is a great point.
Yeah. Am I insured?
Yeah, so this is a big thing that a lot of candidates don't consider, but as a contractor, you aren't covered from an insurance perspective by the business like you would be if you're a permanent employee.
Yeah, and I guess our job as recruiters is to ensure that you're safe and insured at all times, which is another reason why going through a recruiter or someone that does this as a profession is important, because they have those considerations. So insurance included with Encore's PAYG, God help me, set up. I've got to put it on the screen, but that's definitely something to keep in mind. And if you do self-source a contracting role, that's definitely a consideration that you should make as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Cool. On that other note, we are also a licensed contractor here in Queensland. Not all recruiters do have that, so do keep an eye out for that as well. How do I calculate my hours?
Yeah, so again, this does depend on where you're going to work. However, generally you will have a manager or director that you will be reporting to like you would in any normal full-time role. At the end of each week, you'll record those hours into a payroll system, and these will be improved by that manager, and then you'll get paid just like normal. We work to keep it as streamlined, as simple as possible, and it will all be covered when you're being onboarded, so it's not like you'll go in confused, you'll know exactly what's happening. Something else we also do recommend is using a project management tool. You probably already do this in your workplace now, but it's great to track your efforts. So some softwares we recommend is Clockify, Toggle, or Harvest, and it's just a good way to kind of see what you've been working on, how long it's taking you. So if anything were to come up, you can go back and refer to it.
Absolutely. And I mean, we just started using Clockify in business just from a kind of efficiency point of view. And kind of looking at, okay, why did that take me that long? How can I improve that as next time? So even just from like a professional development point of view, time tracking is definitely an interesting thing to implement.
Yeah, definitely interesting looking back at how long you're spending on different things.
How do I get paid? Oh, there we go. So look, that is a great question. It's something I get all the time. Kind of working in that software engineering space, we're definitely seeing an increase in contracting opportunities. So I'm like deep in the contracting space right now. So we partner with a company called Encore, which is a payrolling service for us. They make the process really, really easy for both the contractor and the businesses we recruit for. So as Kayla kind of mentioned, you simply fill out a timesheet at the end of each week. The company you're working for approves it, and then you're paid. It's easy, it's streamlined, and all that will be covered in your onboarding.
Yeah.
Another fun question is, if my clicker works, who am I technically employed by?
Okay, I'm going to try and keep it super simple, but essentially you, the contractor, will be employed by us at Digital Talent Co, and we provide you to the business as a resource.
Yeah, I guess that's like just a high level, easy way of explaining it. But to be honest, contracting done right, and if you're in the team for a longer period of time than that 10-hour engagement we were talking about, you will feel like an integrated member of the team. You won't notice that you're employed by someone else. That's just purely from like a paperwork admin side of things.
Yeah, and we'll just be there to check in with you if you have anything that you need to ask, or your concerns, or you just want to have a chat. Like, we're there all the time, but you won't notice us in terms of payroll.
Yeah. And I guess that's another benefit of going through a recruiter. Like yesterday afternoon, I was in negotiations, and it was just nice to have that middle person to do it rather than you and your employer doing it and kind of having that ick factor.
Yes.
Having that to outsource to when someone looking after your best interests is always a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Next question is, how do I get, do I get a contract? Not how do I, just do I? Yes, so a formal contractual engagement is made between you, us, the recruitment agency, and our payrolling partner, Encore. And that's just to ensure that it's all done in a fully compliant way. And then the client or the business you'd be working for also gets their own contract as well. And that's between us and them. Just, it's kind of how you facilitate that. But in a simple term, yes, you get a contract. It's very similar to a permanent full-time contract in the fact that there'll be a notice period, kind of rules around conduct on both parties to make sure that everyone's protected.
Yeah, perfect.
Kayla.
Yes.
Can I work for multiple employers at a time?
So again, this comes down to the arrangement. Sorry, I feel like I'm broken record, but it does depend on where you're going. And I guess if you're working for a 6-month full-time engagement, that wouldn't really be feasible because you're needed there 40 hours a week. But I guess it does depend. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I feel like we keep using the graphic designer versus like a 6-month fixed kind of placement.
Yeah.
But yeah, for her, like that candidate, she would absolutely be able to take on other roles. Whereas my candidate that's going into the building on that 6-month full-time kind of provision, they're not going to have time to have another contract, to be completely transparent. Something I'd recommend is having a good tax person at the end of the financial year, just to lodge those different types of incomes if you are having multiple employers, as it can get a bit confusing. And at the end of the day, any fees that you pay to that tax person will be a deductible expense for the following year. So it's definitely worth doing it if you have a variety of different income streams and sources from different employers and companies.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely wouldn't want to be responsible for that. I need someone on board.
What happens if I want to leave the contract early?
So just like any other contract, this one, however, is flexible. So with the standard notice period being a 7-day notice period, very similar to what you might be as a full-time employee. It might be 4 weeks, 2 weeks. This one, generally, we have 7-day notice periods. However, this does go both ways. So if your employer decides that you're not a good fit, or maybe it's just not working out, they can also give you 7 days notice. So I guess that could be another pitfall. There is that shorter notice period.
Yeah, and again, sounding like a broken record, but it really depends on the engagement, the kind of notice period that's involved there.
Exactly, yeah.
If you're doing a 10-hour project, your notice period is not going to be 7 days. So it just ultimately comes down to what's comfortable for you and also the employee. And that's something we can discuss at contract phase as well.
Yeah.
Another really common question is, what if I've been stood down? Can I keep my full-time role that I've been stood down from while contracting in the meantime until business is back to normal? And that's definitely something that we're seeing in your flight centres and that sort of thing as well, where they have a job that they absolutely love and they don't want to let it go unless they have to, but they also want to keep their career moving. The ATO has answered this question. This is definitely not something we're qualified to answer for, but the ATO website does say that you can earn additional income without your JobKeeper payments being affected, as long as you maintain your employment, including being stood down, with your JobKeeper eligible employer. So if you use that flight centre as an example, you've been stood down from there, they're a terrific company to work for, so you want to keep being employed there, you can accept a contract role. I think where it starts getting into a grey area is if you accept a full-time role without kind of giving a notice period and ending your employment at that company. So it's just something to keep in mind. It is uncharted territory, like the JobKeeper is a very new thing. So I guess just going to that community.ato.gov.au site. And I was on there this morning. They are very active and kind of answering different questions direct to people's personal situations. So whatever it is, ask them. They're the experts and can refer to the legislation on that.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. We're about to head into live questions. We've got one question left. So if you do have any questions, don't forget to pop them in the Q&A section and we'll be getting to those shortly. The last question from us is, what is the personality of a great contractor?
Look, again, it depends, but for me, I'd be looking for someone confident, a fast learner, someone that's adaptable and can work autonomously, someone that has a broad range of experience, I guess, in different kind of areas that are relevant to that business that we're helping to contract for.
Yeah, no, definitely. And for me, what I'm looking for my clients is that proven experience. What have you done in a previous role that means you can come in and execute for them efficiently into a high standard? And also, what knowledge or kind of intelligence can you bring from those previous roles? The other kind of trait you really need to have is great stakeholder management. and kind of being that people person and liaise with different people across different kind of silos in the business. But also kind of, roll up your sleeve attitude. Don't dilly-daddle like you are in to execute a project or that sort of things. That personality, that go-get-em attitude.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Look, those are kind of the frequently asked questions we get from candidates all day, every day. So we kind of just wanted to answer them all for you in one fell swoop. But we do have a couple live questions which we'll be answering. If you have a question right now, definitely pop it in.
The Q&A.
Awesome. So the first question is, how do you calculate how many hours to allocate to a project when the client prefers a project budget versus an hourly rate? Which is a good question. Do you want me to tackle that one?
I think you need to tackle that one.
Beautiful. I mean, I'm going to start off with, if you're in a permanent role or a contract role, communication, like absolute key. When you're kind of heading into something that is a project and they want, okay, in 6 weeks' time, how much is this going to cost me? Being open and transparent and kind of, it's like building a house. Sometimes you think it's going to take 6 months and ends up taking 8. Sometimes budgets change. But if you're upfront and transparent the entire time, that kind of news and delivery is going to be much easier than your employer feeling blindsided, I guess. That's probably the easiest way to put it. So what I would do, and kind of coming from an agency background, we used to quote project budgets versus hourly rates quite frequently. Kind of list out all the different deliverables that need to be done for that project, then kind of itemize those deliverables. And I guess it's really also coming back to that time tracking answer of if you have spent the time and investment in learning how long roles take, quoting a project budget is much easier, because you can say, cool, you need 6 blog posts. I know it takes me 1.5 hours for a blog post, including editing, writing, researching, and you can kind of extrapolate the answer from there. So it really comes down to knowing yourself, knowing how long those things take you, itemizing the deliverables, and then itemizing the different action points to like produce each deliverable, and then being able to bundle that all together. But then again, at the same time, like I have a candidate going into a business and the project hasn't been scoped yet. So it's got a 6 to 12 week time frame. And what that looks like will be highly dependent on the scoping and the strategy part of that project. I don't know if that helped answer your question, but it's definitely a case-by-case situation. But I'm happy to discuss it over email if you wanted to flick me an email as well. We can discuss your personal circumstance.
Yeah, perfect. No, that was great.
Did you have anything to add to that, sorry?
No, that was fantastic. I loved it.
Is there any other questions that we can help answer today?
There's a little chat.
Yeah, fair.
I guess something we didn't touch on is the onboarding process, like how that would differ from, I guess, being a full-time employee. I think we did discuss this in the employers one last week, but we were just chatting a bit about how going into a business, you would have a very similar onboarding process, like obviously understanding the business's why and I guess what you're there to do and understanding the culture and going from there. But it probably would be a little bit quicker of a process because again, you're in there to execute a project. So it's probably not the usual, like how long would you say an onboarding process could be? It differs a bit.
It really differs. Like if you're doing a 10-hour project, the onboarding is probably going to be 20 minutes. If you're there for 6 months, it'll probably be a week, 2 weeks. And it also comes down to why they're bringing you in. Like some companies are like, we just need an extra pair of hands, pop on a desk, get to work. Where others are like, cool, like we're doing this high level strategy project. We want you to understand the why and kind of deeply get the project. And so that onboarding process and kind of embedding into the culture will be a bit different.
Yeah, for sure.
Another question is, will I have more flexibility to work from home with a contract?
Oh, again, depends on the business. I think yes, generally. However, it probably depends if you're working in large teams or if you're just going in to kind of, just say you are using graphic design example again. If the business doesn't have a graphic designer and that's what you're there for, you probably come in maybe to meet the team, get to know everyone, but there probably would be a bit of flexibility. Same as a content writer, I feel like they're 2 great examples of people that can work remotely quite effectively.
I think it comes down to the organisation that you're going to be contracting with, the type of role, and also their needs. So if, like, even if you are a graphic designer, I keep referring to as one example, they might not know what they need, and so you need to come in and sit with them and workshop it, versus a client that's like, I need 7 posters with this copy and this is our brand style guide, and you can go execute quite easily. The great thing about COVID is it's made businesses realize that their team can work remotely and be really efficient, and they don't need that face time as much. So it comes down to the engagement business, but with COVID, remote working is definitely something we're seeing increase dramatically.
Yeah, and I think that these are all things that the questions you're asking, we generally will get to know all of these things once we obviously have, when we're working with the client. So we sit down with the client and go through all these things. Is it remote? How many hours a week? What is the, I guess, do they need to log their project hours? Like little things like that. We tick all those boxes before we would get like contact the contractor to network. So these are all great questions, and it does depend on the circumstances, but we would know the circumstance before we contacted you.
Yeah, and it also depends on what you want. Like if you're an absolute rock star, but you're like, the only way you can have me is if I work from home, that's a conversation we can have with the client. Some clients aren't going to be for it, but we can really look at opportunities that cater what it is that you're looking for. Like I have another candidate that splits their time between the Sunshine Coast and Brisbane, and kind of making sure that we present opportunities to him that fit that lifestyle that he's looking for, so he can be with his partner, but also the employee wins as well because they get a bit of face time with them.
Yeah, perfect.
Another question, does anyone provide a service to help determine the time to complete a task, or are there any resources available to help figure this out? That is a great question. I mean, it's so like this is an anonymous person, so I don't know who they are. It's hard because it depends on your role, the type of task that you're completing. Like it's too hard to pinpoint, but at the same time, again, using tools like Clockify, Toggle, that sort of thing, just to measure how long those tasks do take you. And then you can kind of figure out, okay, they take me between an hour and a half and 2 hours per every time I do it. So I know to quote the client at 1.75 hours because that's the happy medium. So
there could definitely be software that does it though.
I mean, never say
anyone that's on here knows of anything. If you do chat, pop it in the chat function, but I haven't heard of anything before, but I'm sure there would be. Yeah, we'll be able to find that somewhere.
And I think also it comes back down to having a great network of people in the same industry as you. So you can, like, I've got some girlfriends that do freelance marketing. So when I was looking at doing freelance marketing, I was able to turn to them and be like, what do you quote for this project? How long would it take you? And kind of getting that industry insights. And it's different too, like for a web dev, the tasks, actions and cost are going to look very different. So I guess it just comes down to your industry, what it is that you're doing. That makes sense. But also definitely worth a Google to see if those resources exist. Ruben has asked, which industries, types of businesses are you guys experiencing turning to this way of engaging workers that didn't before? Great question.
I think a lot, to be honest. It goes from small businesses up to big, large corporations. We've seen some of the big banks taking on short-term contracts now. So I think it's just the way of doing it. It's not everyone's doing it, to say like there's still people hiring, still full-time roles out there, but I think it is becoming more common and people are starting to understand the concept a little bit better. Yeah, no, definitely. I think across the board for me, like I'm just kind of thinking of my client list. It's SaaS, it's consultancies and agencies, digital products, media. It's kind of across the board. It's kind of I guess it comes down to more the personality type of the business or hiring team versus the industry itself. And it is those people that aren't quite fully ready to commit to a permanent decision, or I'm kind of calling it the COVID black hole, but what's happened is a lot of SaaS companies have kind of frozen. And they're like, all right, let's see what happens. We'll kind of slow down the different projects we're working on. But now they're coming out of COVID, they're behind schedule. So they're wanting to throw a lot of developer resources to get the project done on time. So I wouldn't say there's a specific industry. Like obviously travel is still very quiet. I can think of quiet industries, but I can't think of a particular industry that's doing this contracting type. No, I think it's quite broad.
And for us, like definitely it's the software development, the DevOps, that sort of things that's increased in contracting terms.
Definitely.
We've had a few ad hoc marketing things, but it's definitely also IT, kind of those parts in the business that's quite technical. They need someone to come in, execute, and they probably don't have a need for them beyond that in terms of a long-term relationship, where the marketing is a bit slower on the contracting uptake.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Exactly.
But I do think that wave will definitely come. Once the product's built and the features are kind of developed, they will have the marketers come in to kind of execute that as well. Another question from Holly, who is actually a boss, so nice to have her on here today. She's asked, with the pandemic still happening and Melbourne in lockdown for 6 weeks starting today, do your contractors work mostly in the office or online remotely? We kind of answered this. It really comes down to the individual. COVID's been really interesting for me because my clients now are interested in seeing candidates from all over Australia, which obviously opens up the candidate pool dramatically and kind of the options and caliber of talent we have at our fingertips. So I currently actually have candidates in Perth that are working for clients here in Brisbane. I also have clients in Melbourne and I'm finding them candidates in Brisbane. But at the same time, it comes down to the engagement, what they're needing from you. Do they need you in the office? And all those different specifics of the project.
Well, I guess like the contractors in marketing that we have at the moment, they are all working remotely and online. So I think one of the ladies is up in Cairns working for Brisbane, and then the other's just based in Brisbane, but because of COVID, she's been working from home since she started about 4 months ago. So they actually met the team, I think, twice in person. So, but she's ready to get back into the office. She's loving it. So.
And it really depends on the organisation too. Like something I've noticed is your international big guys, your Atlassians, your Ciscos, your Amazons, they are very slow to come back to the workforce because they've got to, or come back to the office, not the workforce, but they have to keep in mind international, like the different laws across different cities, states, countries. Whereas someone like us, we're a team of 3, so it's quite easy for us to reintegrate to work. So those SMEs will be coming back sooner than your large international companies that have multiple considerations and large workforces.
Global presence makes it a bit more difficult.
Look, guys, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much. If you have any more questions, please do email them to us. Or if you kind of have a question specific to your needs that you kind of didn't want to put up on here today, I've put our contact details up on the screen. If you need anything, we are only ever a call or email away. I
think that's all. If you have any, we're always up for a chat, always up for a phone call. So just give us a buzz and we can help you out. Even if it's just to chat about, what you're looking to do, or we just need a bit of advice. I'm happy to send you through any resources we have.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and I'm sure we'll connect with you shortly.
Yay. Thank you so much, guys.